Research Council is a virtual organization that congregates research funding agencies across the world. We have had in the Global Research Council meetings and in the regional meetings a number between 50 and 90 research agencies participated. As I said before, most of them are national agencies. I think FAPESP is one of the exceptions, the São Paulo Research Foundation, which is subnational, and the National Research Council of Brazil, CNPq, is also a part, though not a host of this meeting. The GRC has a system of having annual meetings each year, and for each annual meeting, a topic or two topics are chosen to be the focus of the conversation. And for this year, and also besides a topic, they also have a system for selecting which agency or which agencies are going to be the hosts. Serão os anfitriões da reunião. Sometimes I'll move to Portuguese too. Okay, thank you.
I almost do not recognize.
Okay, and so 2 years ago, FAPESP worked with DFG to build a proposal and with CONICET, and we proposed it to the Global Research Council that a good theme for discussion would be the assessment and the demonstration of the impacts of research, which is a topic which was easily accepted because most research funding agencies in the world deal with this and need to do that because they are all publicly funded, and in all countries, that's what we learned in the discussions, in all countries they are worried about this, about demonstrating better the impact, about creating more impact, and how impact should or should not be used in the selection of proposals and so on. So we proposed this topic. The governing board of the Global Research Council accepted the topic and the proposition to host the meeting here in São Paulo. So during the last year, we worked with the Global Research Council. We wrote a paper together in 6 hands. More hands, right?
More hands.
The other guys too. We wrote a paper, a white paper, that was base for a discussion that happened in regional meetings. One of the Americas, one of Europe, one of the Middle East and North Africa, another one Asia, and another one Africa. So they discussed the paper, and we built from this discussion a statement of principles, which is a 2 or 3 page document which is in your folders about assessing and demonstrating the impact of research in, I think, 18 points maybe. And this statement of principles came to this meeting, was submitted to the plenary here in São Paulo. We had 52 research funding agencies from 50 countries. All of the major research funding agencies in the world were here, all of them. And we had, besides the discussion about impact, we had other discussions too, which are very important for the research councils. We started on Monday with a discussion which happened at Unesp in Barra Funda we are trying to organize an initiative on Latin American research facilities, big experiments among Latin American countries. Then on Monday afternoon there was a discussion here about the Sustainable Development Goals, promoted by the Research Council of the UK, UKRI, UK Research and Innovation, with the participation of several funders. Then on Tuesday we had a session on open access, which is a hot topic for all agencies, universities, and scientists in the world. It was promoted by an organization called Science Europe, which congregates the research funding agencies of Europe and some performing research organizations too. Then we had on Wednesday a session on partnerships for research and evaluating programs. And then on Wednesday, what else did we have on Wednesday? A session on gender issues in relation to science. And then on Thursday and Friday, we had the discussions of the Global Research Council in plenary sessions, which endorsed the statement of principles about impact, and which had other discussions. We had two very nice talks, one by Professor Londa Schreibinger from Stanford on gender issues in relation to science and academia, and another one which was remotely done by Professor Jeffrey Sachs from the University of Columbia about the Sustainable Development Goals, climate change, and science. Both were very interesting, considering from the debate that happened after the talks. And we discussed other points too, like supporting young investigators, how we organize our peer reviewing schemes, and several other topics. So that's the summary of the week, and let's go to your questions. And unless my friends here have other topics to add that I might have forgotten. So it's open to you.
Hi, good afternoon. I haven't had a chance to read the statement, of course. It was just handed out to us, but if you could just maybe highlight what are the key, most challenging points that you've addressed during this week, and this demand of showing impact and economic impact, social impact is a very hot topic in Brazil now. I mean, it's a big topic all over the world, but it's increasingly very hot here. So how are you guys dealing with this in your own countries, and what are the key suggestions that are coming out of this document here?
There, if you read you will find in the document two main approaches or main problem addressed by the research agencies. One is how do you estimate the impact in order to fund a given project. So to have an ex-ante examination of the possible impact of that project, particularly when you have to prioritize a budget. The second one is what it's called the ex post estimation of impact, and that is we discuss, there's some is said in the document, but we discuss what are the different methods to evaluate the impact ex post. And one of the main problems is the time lapse between the end of a project that has been funded and the real impact that could be, and in some cases, pretty much immediate, but in some cases you can have to wait 3 or 4 years.
Or 20.
Or 20.
Or 80.
Or 80.
Einstein's relativity theory after 80 years had an impact on GPS.
Right.
So in that case, that
No
long
GPS
term,
without.
that long term of the time lapse so long to really discover the impact of a given funded research is sometimes it's difficult to explain the investment in that particular project without an immediate impact.
Yeah, from my point of perspective, I would say it is not an ideological but a methodological question. The ideological question would be, are you in favor or against impact of research? That is a stupid question. Nobody programmatically wants to do impact-free research, you know. And even on the other side, the opposite notion to impact would be truth. Search for truth and looking for impact of research. And if you are interested in research, you must be interested in truthful scientific outcomes. You would not be interested in scientific lies. So this is the question put this way is not plausible and leads very instantly only to a legitimation discourse or legitimation narrative to the question how modern research systems, as expensive as they are, can be explained to the public and legitimized vis-a-vis political stakeholders and so forth. The real question that the funders are concerned with is the methodological question. How to bring questions of impact, how to categorize impact, how to bring questions of impact into the decision-making processes on project or on a project funding or research assessment. And if you take it like Jorge said, and discriminate between ex post assessments and ex ante reviews on research project, then methodologically spoken, the impact criterion is an intricate criterion, because what is a research project? An expectation or a promise for further research. What then is, if you ask the applicants of a research project to show the impact of their research project, what then is impact? Impact is a promise or an expectation of future impact of a future research process. Strictly categorically spoken. So how to deal with this in evaluation processes, and all the other questions derive then from that. How can we make impactful research visible to the public without narrowing the spectra of research that we fund, the spectra of disciplines that come into account when a, say, grand challenge or a societal or a economical challenge is to be solved by scientific endeavors and so forth. But the main topic and the 18 principles that are on the page that you found in your folders is to make the debate on impact, which is primarily a political debate, a debate that imposes pressure, political pressure on the research systems to deal with these wisely and to discriminate what is the discussion about and what it is not about.
One of the things interesting too, at the beginning of the document, it really makes it clear that we are speaking of three levels of impact. One, typically, the more easily to be performed for the scientific community is the scientific impact. So it generally is measurable very easily. The second one is the economic impact of a given research. And for that, I invite you to go to our website and go to the Ottawa Declaration, and that is a very nice document on the transition from fundamental science to innovation, for instance. But the third one that is included in this meeting is the societal impact that is not measurable directly, not for the scientific products and neither for the economic value of a given contribution. There are several examples of that, but the comprehension of the labor market, the comprehension of the environmental problems are not measurable economically directly, for instance.
Just to give an example, probably the most important impact or effect of higher education and research systems to their respective societies is the generation of skilled and educated young people. How to measure that? Not only by the numbers of the absolvents, of the graduates of a university system, because this is only quantitative and does nothing say about the quality of their education, the niveau of their intellectual and scientific and scholarly skills that they bring to society. So we just try to open up this to de-narrow the spectrum of questions that are politically imposed on the research system. And that is not only a Brazilian phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon in developed as well as in, forgive me for using these catchphrases, as well as in developing countries. That's really a global discourse that has in the end to do with the extreme expansion of the research systems, the amount to which they cost public money, the amount to which people of societies are participating in research in higher education systems and so forth.
And if I could add one, maybe 2 points, which are especially relevant for the debate and the discussion in Brazil. One of them is that, as Peter said, but I want to stress that, we had there 52 research funding agencies, and all of them agreed it is necessary to have good ways to assess and to demonstrate impact. So that shows us 2 things. One, that there is a broad agreement, and second, that this is something that afflicts everywhere in the world, not only in Brazil. Here in Brazil, there is sometimes this tendency to think only here in Brazil somebody would want. No, all around the world, people, the taxpayer wants to see results, right? The second point is that in the discussion about assessment and demonstration of impacts, there is a frequent situation in which people tend to oppose excellence to impact. And this is very clearly stated, the conclusion of GRC about that, in point number 11. GRC participants reaffirm that scientific excellence must remain the core criterion of research evaluation. So the fact that it's relevant doesn't mean you are going to accept weaker projects. On the contrary, the more important it is for society, the better projects you want, because the effects on society must be good, not bad. So excellence is the key criterion. Then there are others, and then there is the that's why we talk about the 3-dimensional impact situation, in which you have intellectual impact, economic impact, societal impact. And finally, there is this agreement which appears in several of the topics, which could summarize the thing. It's complicated. It's not easy to assess impact, because if you do it the wrong way, you might get the weirdest results. And I gave there at the meeting an example, which was the case of Google. You know Google, everybody does. So Google, the 2 guys who created Google were funded with fellowships from the National Science Foundation in 1994. It was a program that the National Science Foundation created called Digital Libraries Initiative. The National Science Foundation was not thinking about creating a search engine for the internet. They were talking about libraries, about books in shelves, and you had to classify them and find the books. So they had their fellowships. In 1998, they came up with the algorithm, the page ranking thing. In 1999, 5 years after, they tried to sell this company, which the 2 students had created, which was called Google. They offered it for $1 million. Nobody wanted to buy. They decreased the price to $750,000. No one wanted to buy the company. So if you would make the evaluation there about Google, a committee would say, well, that's a failure of funding, because you spent all this money and nobody wants to buy this company. And today it's a company of $800 billion. So it's complicated.
And that's only ex post assessment, which is more easier than ex ante
right, yeah.
assessment of impact
right.
promises.
Bruno from Pesquisa FAPESP magazine.
Thank you.
There is an idea in some countries, including now Brazil, that funding research in fields like sociology or philosophy represents a waste of public research because they would not bring immediate economic benefits to society. How do GRC see this question, and how can social science contribute with the research in general in the world?
In the first instance, the Global Research Council is devoted to funding, fostering, reflecting on the entire spectrum of academic disciplines, not only those that are covered by the English notion science, but also those that are called social sciences or humanities or sciences humaines, and so forth. And there is a shared conviction that modern societies would not know anything about themselves without the social sciences and humanities, and could not prosper and develop. And you can go just along these examples with the digital, to put it that way, which causes immense effects on societies, on their legal structure, on their value systems, on their self-reflection, on their opportunities, chances, and possibilities to self-observe themselves, the societies. All that without social sciences and humanities is totally unthinkable. You would be bound to a very naive, if not resentful, in a way rude notion of what society and societal living is about without these disciplines. One could give, or one could pose this argument even in a more complex way by saying what the humanities, not the social sciences as a means of self-observation of modern societies, but the humanities in special what they are delivering, so to say, to society. And one could say the sciences deal with the real. The humanities deal with history, fictions, lyrics, cultural practices in any way, simultaneous to us in different word spheres, or in diachrony back to history, or in imagination and fiction and dreams, religious resentments, and so forth. And all that is something that I can put together as the possible. So the sciences deal with the real, but there is no real in human society if you do not think about what is opposed to the real, namely the possible. The possible is not only chances, it's also threats, it's opportunities, and so forth. There are very different forms of possibilities. But if we were not able to make the possible present in the research systems, in the context of social sciences, humanities, engineering, and so forth, we would not have the opportunity of freedom, because freedom means to make decisions between different forms of possibilities, and those as the most important aspects of human beings as being free beings. Those aspects must also be represented in the research and higher education system. If not, this most important thing would be totally absent from what society as knowledge societies know about themselves.
And if I can make an example for something that is right at the tip of our fingers, which are social media. The development of social media would have been very slow unless the contribution of, sorry Peter about that, but the linguistics.
No.
Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay, because Peter is a linguistic by training.
No, I'm not a linguist.
No, you know.
Philologist.
No.
Philologist, sorry.
I'm a
Just
literary historian.
Don't record this. Sorry about it. But again, what I'm saying is something that is right at the tip of our fingers is very much related to those social sciences. And even the interpretation of the problems that are arising from the use of social media are, again, a matter of social sciences. So the conflicts that are emerging from that use is really a matter of that need research to comprehend that indeed.
Or to give a third example, you probably know the notion of the Anthropocene, which is a way by which scientists explain that the global history of our planet has moved into a era where the human interferences in geophysiological processes are irreversible. The interesting thing is that the scientists this conceive as Anthropocene, as the intervention of the anthropos, the human being. But it is not a single human being that is interfering in geophysical processes. No one single human being would be able to do so. What is actually interfering is human beings as members of societies. So we should know something about the societies.
Karina from Agência FAPESP. The communication strategies you are adopting your agencies to help demonstrate the impact of research. Can you give some examples?
The typical discussion at the levels of our board of directors or decision makers is money, budget. So the discussion is probably the most important one is between our boards and the government to sustain the budget that we have, to increase it. And the best argument that they understand is impact, is product. And not only the three dimensions that we talked about, but mostly the economic one. That's a quite narrow and limited. It's very important. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's just one part of the issue. So there is a continuous effort of the agencies to demonstrate to the governments that we are contributing to the societal progress, to the economic progress, to the market expansion, and that is a continuous discussion. So it's important, first of all, for our boards to understand these documents in order to have a common message and a real based documents based on consensus discussed among others, and then to explain in a common voice to our governments.
At FAPESP we do that in several ways, because the foundation, the board and the directorate finds that it's very important to communicate to several different types of public. So there is the general public, some fraction of it, which we try to reach with the Revista Pesquisa FAPESP, which goes every month in Portuguese. Very few agencies in the world have a monthly magazine like the Revista Pesquisa FAPESP. And so that's one of the initiatives. Then there is a newsletter that goes every day to more than 100,000 addresses in Portuguese about science, impact, results, and so on. Then there is communication to public outside Brazil. The newsletter goes every week in English and in Spanish. That's in good part responsible for the capacity of FAPESP to create interactions across the globe. Then there is interaction with policymakers. FAPESP has been working with the legislative branch. Every month there is a symposium which is held there at the Assembleia Legislativa de São Paulo, and it's organized together with ILP, Instituto do Legislativo Paulista, which is a training effort by the legislative branch. And we have every month one symposium there on topics like artificial intelligence, science for agriculture, health, diabetes, cancer, obesity, and so on. And then there is the effort that FAPESP does to communicate with the public in general, which is through television programs which we do together with Folha de São Paulo, together with Canal Futura, and so on. So there is a spectrum of efforts.
I could add for the DFG side to these instruments that we mostly also engage, that we also exhibit research projects that we fund. on different places at different universities. We have sort of a wandering exhibition on microbiology for a couple of years, which has been shown at about 20 or 22 places throughout the German speaking countries. And we also arranging lectures, public lectures by prominent researchers, not only in Germany but also in those countries with which we have special collaborative relations, for example here in Brazil, in São Paulo. Of course we have to do politics, but every research organization has to do politics, and we collaborate with other science and higher education institutions in Germany. For example, this year, throughout the year going series of very different events, some of them very prominent with the participation of the President of the Republic, to the question of freedom of inquiry, because our constitution, the Grundgesetz, has its 70th birthday or anniversary this year in May, and we took that as a ground on which what we do in the last years, more than 40 events throughout the year in different formats, in different places, with different participants and actors to, well, in a way showcase the benefits of freedom of inquiry.
In addition to all those media, we have two more. We have a TV program, documentaries filmed by our special group at CONICET, and then we have itinerary fairs that go, to small cities. So they have a fair on science and in small cities, and they are itinerary through several regions. And that's, I want to rescue that, because it's important for us to aware the hidden vocaciones.
Vocações. Vamos falar em português, vai mais fácil.
Despertar vocaciones científicas en los estudiantes.
Where are you from?
Tiago from O Globo.
O Globo.
How soon, Carlos, can we expect some changes, even though if they are like abstract changes in the criteria for new FAPESP projects with some of these evaluations you say here in the letter?
Well, that's an interesting question. Most of the ideas which are there are ideas that we have been using. But there are some points there, especially point 11, which settles a conversation that has been on for some time, the thing about committing to excellence. So that's one point. That's very strong in the tradition of FAPESP. Then there is this challenge with which we are working about demonstrating impact in the best possible ways. And for that, FAPESP has been working and is working in organizing what we call program evaluations, in which we take a specific program from FAPESP, not a project. A program for us is a collection of projects which we created for an objective. And then we contract a number of researchers to make an evaluation if that program is brought the results that we wanted. And we have a team of researchers at the Science and Technology Policy Department at the University of Campinas who are very good at doing that. They made a presentation here, and the presentation raised so much interest that I was asked by many of the participants to have them come back today because they want to have conversations about using their methodology for doing evaluations for several countries. So program evaluation is the key point there.
I'm Fábio de Castro. I'm from Direto da Ciência. I'm concerned about this question about on communicating the impact of science, because many of us here worked in big newspapers or are specialized in covering science, and I think there are less and less specialized journalists and the press and the mainstream media. And on the other side, you have the complete freedom of internet with fake news and bullshit. Such. And how can we deal with this? Do the agencies are thinking about maybe putting some money in that kind of coverage, of serious coverage that have to have impact too? Because in the newspapers they don't think that it's a popular subject. It seems. And so how can we deal with this?
Peter? Yeah, if I may, I would try to show my reflections or our reflections, our situation in Germany, in 3 points. One is that, fired by the development of social media, of course, modern liberal societies are in what I would call a structural crisis. And the structural crisis is to be seen not least by the fact that populist and autocratic movements around the globe, when they take over power, in the first instance attack the judiciary, the media system, and the science systems. You can observe that in Poland, in Turkey, and you can observe that with Donald Trump, of course, in very different places. I think quite plausibly so, because the media, the judiciary, and the science system are those societal sectors where modern societies institutionalize their truth discourses. That's the first point. And what is lacking, therefore, is a skilled and educated form of science journalism. That's my second point. I would strictly discriminate science journalism, an educated form of scientific journalism, from science communication, the advertising and the lobbying that we ourselves do for the research that we fund. It's a very important thing. We have the papers, we have our own communication means, what we're just talking about, and all fine and good and necessary, but it's different from what a educated, a critical form of scientific journalism has to deliver to modern societies, because what we deliver is self-observation of science. What we need is a strange observation of science from a professional journalistic point of view. And this point of view is under pressure, not only under attack by populists and autocrats, but also under pressure by the developments of the media systems, of course, as printed papers and traditional media like TV and so forth are likewise under pressure. The third point I want to make with respect to this is that there is an obligation, or at least I see it as an obligation, to funding agencies like the DFG in a quite complex way to contribute to a process where professional science journalism that developed in print and TV systems is transformed in a likewise qualitatively high professional science journalism under the premises of the new media techniques that we have at hand. And the German Research Foundation, or me personally, for example, we do this by giving awards to journalists as role models, how a professional high-rank science journalism could look alike. We do so by funding for workshops and networking groups of science journalists, and some other means. And I think this is in the well, at least I would like to say we have to be alert that not only science communication is necessary for the system as a whole, but also this sort of professionalized science journalism, which transformational processes we want to, well, in a way, also further.
What are the most common misconceptions that you think people have about this connection between research and its impact on society?
I would say solutionism. I call that solutionism. The expectation that it is the task of science to deliver in short time and in very short functional chains concrete solutions to problems that the society already knows about. That is a part of the functionalities of modern research systems, but only a part. And the misconception is to generalize this particular functionality of modern research for the entire research system, for every discipline and so forth. It is in my perspective, the most important functionality of modern research systems is that they deliver methodologically sound knowledge which can reasonably be called new, and that means it is unexpected. If it were expected, it is not new knowledge. That the research system delivers knowledge that is methodologically sound and reasonably can reasonably claim to be new, knowledge on questions that society not even knows that those problems that are bound to these questions or these insights may occur later in time.
I would add to, well, perhaps competing with, because I agree with what Peter said, but maybe competing with his most frequent point. Mine would be a point related to the fact that many times there is we face a belief that science will be able to create solutions out of nothing. That is, create solutions now without having a previous stock of knowledge created for many centuries. So in most cases, you can solve problems with science because one of the things that scientists know is how to search for the knowledge that was generated in 1800s, 1900s, or they read things, they can find things, they can ask the questions and have the contacts. It's not that one scientist or a community of scientists started yesterday and today they are going to bring solutions to things. So this time factor, which because of this understanding that you do not need the stock and you're going to magically find a solution, leads to a type of short-termism, something that it's a simplification which is wrong. It's, we try
agree.
to.
I totally agree.
There's another typical question is to expect a single answer to a given problem, and it's very difficult to explain with just a single answer because problems are interdisciplinary, they are complex. You cannot explain with a single answer things like whatever they cost. I mean, labor market problems, alcoholism, drug addiction, things like that. So that's one typically main problem. The other one is what Peter explained is they generally, the one that is asking the question doesn't really distinguish the role of scientists and those who have the responsibility of solving the problem, it's another group of people.
Yeah.
So we
Scientists can propose an
yeah,
idea,
so propose
but
and
not
give
do the
knowledge.
thing.
But the people responsible for give the solutions are not in the interview.
Scientists told the world a long time ago about climate change. No, they do not make the laws that restrain emissions.
But they
and
don't
stuff.
decide the
Someone
markets.
else does.
The other paramount misconception is, or to put it the other way around, is that science would produce certain truths. It does not.
Yeah, it does not.
It does not.
Not in
It
the
does
short
not
term.
produce certain truths. It does produce methodologically sound knowledge that then may open up for society, for actors, for decision makers, the opportunities, the alternatives they have reasonably at hand. But that's it.
And
And the fifth misconception is
you wanted one.
Okay,
and the fifth
page 5.
The fifth misconception is that world phenomena themselves would be scientific problems. That is not true. What is in the world must be transformed to a scientific problem in order to be researched then. The climate change is by no means an object of research as such. It is a realm which is to be differentiated into dozens, hundreds, thousands of different complex research questions that then on their own must be scientifically pursued, and then in the last instance that these different outcomes of
When you
scientific
add
research
everything.
then are to be integrated in hypotheses about what is the case in the world.
So you have a lot to explain.
Is it up, isn't it?
Any other points, colleagues? If not, thank you very much. It was a
you for your
pleasurable
attention.
conversation.
Very
We
good.
hope you got some interesting ideas here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Muito obrigado.